Hello and welcome to Forest Tech. Today we'll be designing a simple logo, giving it material and light, replicate it using nodes, and animate it using proximity, which is a lot of fun. Also, I've started my Patreon, so feel free to join and get the project files and support the channel. Now let's begin. So if it's your first time in Blender, have a look at this. You can use your middle mouse button to rotate around and the same wheel up and down to zoom in and out. Right click for some menu, you can move G to grab an object and move it around in a certain axis. You can press that axis, that is X, Y, Z. You can even give it a number. Same applies to rotation. If you can just press R, you can rotate it around, give it an axis and even give it an angle. Same case with the scale. You can give it an axis, you can give it a size. You can also press tab to go into an object and edit its vertices, faces or edges. You can press the Z key to change the solid, rendered or textured wireframe modes. Alright, we'll start with a simple shape. Let's get rid of the original cube and add a curve. Now if you can't see all of these curve options, you can go to edit preferences and here in the add-ons search for curves and you'll find quite a lot of additional curves which are by default disabled. So try and enable them and see the new options that appear in your menu. So I'll start by adding a simple circle, select the top vertex and move it up. Scale it down on the y-axis. To get this kind of a pointy surface, let's move and position it up a little bit. I'll set the origin to the 3D cursor so it's right in the center. Now we'll just rotate it. But before that, let's just extrude this up a little bit. Now let's rotate it to 120 degrees and Shift R to replicate the previous step. Let's add a small circle, reduce its diameter, hide them all, and let's add a slender now. Increase subdivisions, shade it to auto smooth, and add a bevel to it. Let's add a plane. Add a boolean to cut hole through the plane using the slender and apply that boolean. Now let's apply the modifier to that slender as well, that is the bevel modifier. Let's scale all of these down so that's right in the center of the slender. Select that face, extrude and grab and hold the Z axis so we can bring that extrude down. Also, I'll use a Control R to add a loop and then Control B to add one more division to that loop, and then we can scale that inside so we can create that nice ring inside the cylinder, which we are going to lit up later. So I'm going to add that to a vertex group. I'm going to name it to lit face. This vertex group allows us to select these vertices later on whenever that's needed. I'm selecting my edge and giving it a bit of a bevel. Let's bring these down a little bit, just right above the slender. select these edges, and E for extrude and Z to pull this down in the Z axis. This should be just below the actual size of the cylinder, so the cylinder can move inside and outside this cut hole. Let's bevel these edges. Control B. And you can use the mouse wheel to increase or decrease the number of edges on the bevel. So try playing with that. Now let's turn on the cycles rendering. Decrease the number of samples. I'll add an environment background to it. Feel free to find them from Polyhaven or HDRI Heaven. I'm going to add some materials now and give these color codes that I've already noted before, so you feel free to copy them or have your own color codes. Material to these petals. Now we can select the remaining petals and select that petal and shift link them using Control L so we can copy the materials. Now if you remember the vertex group that we've created before, we're going to tab, select these vertex groups. So we've got those faces selected. We'll add a new material to this now and assign this material to these vertices, these faces in fact. We can add some glow by increasing the emission strength. You can see that area being lit. Okay, now time to move on. Let's select all of these things and M to move them to a new collection. Call these elements. And that's the plane that we have. Let's add an empty. Make it a circle and just position it right just above these elements. Increase its radius. Call it control or whatever you want to name it. Let's move to geometry node editor by making a simple plane and then add new geometry node to it. Disconnect these two, add a simple node called grid. Mesh 2 points node that I've connected with it, and then instance on points. Connect that to the geometry. Let's bring in that plane which we've created before by dragging and dropping it. Connect that to instance. You can see those instances being laid on the vertices of our grid that we've created. Let's reduce the distance between those points. So we've replicated all of those planes on the vertices of the grid that we've created using geometry nodes. The process is straightforward. We'll do the same thing now with the elements that we've created. So for that, I'll just Shift D and duplicate these set of nodes, move them above, and extend this to make a join geometry node so we can connect the planes and elements together using this join geometry node. Let's get rid of that, and instead of this we'll drag our elements collection here. Use that as an instance. You can't see anything right now because we still need to connect these points to the points, and now we can see everything. So if I select all of these elements and move them down a little bit just to position them, you can do that in geometry nodes as well, but I'm just preferring to do it here. Okay, now we'll use set position node to animate these elements so they can move up and down. So that should be happening in the z-axis. Before we do that, I'll use a combine XYZ node just so we can control the z-axis, just so we can control the z-axis. Now we'll use the control that we've created, the empty control. So I'll create a mesh line, connect that with the control empty that we've created before, and connect that mesh line node to proximity node, and have that result connected to our map range node, which will then connect to our z-axis. Select faces for that, so now we can control the spread of our proximity on different faces by using the map range node. Press 0 to select the camera, and then use Shift tilde to edit the camera, and here you can use WASD keys to move in the camera and move them back, so I'm doing exactly that. When you're done with that, just press the mouse button or enter to confirm your camera. So you can use the proximity node with map range node to control how much you want to spread, increase or decrease the effect of our control moving around. Let me make additional views so I can move it around freely from the top view. And that looks about right. You can adjust that to your liking. Okay, one more thing. I want these petals to rotate when the control actually hovers above this. And in order to do that, we can use a transform node. So let's just add that. Let's move these aside. If I rotate this, you can see all of the petals moving, but we don't want that. We only want the petals to move that are under that control empty. So only the petals in the proximity range should be rotating. To do that, we'll simply just connect the result node and have that to selected. And that should be working fine. Now, as you can see, only the petals within that proximity range are rotating. We can animate that, so let us extend the timeline. Add a single keyframe right here. Add a 360, so that's one whole complete rotation. And if you select A to select all the keyframes, press T and then select linear. Now we've got a proper 360 rotation without any easing happening here. If you move to Graph Editor and press Home to view all the timeline, if you go to Modifier, here you can add cycles, so now this animation will keep rotating endlessly. So now it's a good time to get the final result. Just doing final adjustments here. So here you can adjust the denoiser to see the final result. Also, I'd like to make a final animation, so I'll select the control empty, go to the start, move it along the y-axis, and set a keyframe here. right here and set single keyframe, go to the end of it, move it along the y-axis and set another keyframe. Feel free to do your own animations, I'm just giving you an idea. And select all of these, press T to linear the animations. Now you can see this simple animation going from one side to another. You can move that quicker just to get a faster animation. It's time to finally adjust the materials a bit, get a bit more glossy, reflective surface, more metallic. So I think it's a good time for me to put up a render. So for that, just select optics, give it a reasonable amount of samples, get rid of the denoiser I think, and render animation. You can see that plane popping there, so we'll just hide that right here from render. Okay, both of those parts are hidden, remaining should be on. And now we can hit render animation and see what it looks like. So that's what our final result is like. Alright, so that's everything for today. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. If there's any more suggestions or comments, what we should be working on next, how we can improve the tutorials, then feel free to put them down in the comment section. Also, you've got my patreon.com, so if you want to join and support the channel, do so, and I'll appreciate that. Till again, Forest Tech signing out.